We would now like to introduce to you our guest speaker, Ms. Priya Kumar. She is known internationally as a motivational speaker with over 23 years of experience. She has worked across 46 countries and touched the souls of over 2 million people through her amazing workshops and books. She has written 10 inspirational books which have won 31 international book awards, which makes her the first Indian author to have ever done so. Recently, Miss Priya was awarded with the Times of India Speaking Tree and Good Karma Award. With over 600 published columns for national and international publications, Ms. Priya's work has been featured by the media in India and abroad, and she has been invited as a celebrity guest to several shows. Famously known as the biography specialist, Ms. Priya has successfully penned down the biographies of leading industrialists and legendary businessmen such as O.P. Munjal. She is currently writing the story of Pulela Gopichand, who is the chief national coach of the Indian badminton team. Miss Priya is all set to bring her stories to life with I Will Go With You, her first book, which is streaming on Z5. Presenting to you motivational speaker, author, and filmmaker, Miss Priya Kumar.
My name is Priya Kumar, and I'm a motivational speaker. I also am an author. I have written over 600 columns in my whole career. I have done a lot of radio shows, a lot of television shows, and I've written 10 books. And why is this important to tell you? Because all I get paid for is speaking. All the other periphery work that I do is for free. And see, I've written 10 books which have won 31 international awards. And if you buy one book of mine, sir, what's your name? Dheeraj. If you buy one book of mine, Dheeraj, I get 19 rupees. Might as well just give me the 19 rupees, don't buy the book. It's okay. Yeah? So, people say, oh, you write columns, you do radio shows, you've done television shows. Wow. Wow comes from, if you're working so much, you might also be making so much. Yeah? And I tell you, sometimes passion doesn't come with a paycheck. Yeah, that's the true test of it. Would you still do it if it didn't pay you? And, with the kind of work that I do, it's extremely, work and passion, the paycheck is still missing. And so I thought I would just set that context. And I'm very grateful, that my parents allowed me to discover my purpose and calling at a very, very young age. And that is my agenda for today, effective parenting with a little spiritual edge and how to leave a legacy. Do you think that works? Now, I was down and somebody asked me, how many children do you have? And I said, none. Okay, all right, let's talk about effective parenting. Yeah, so, there was one time, there was a show, and I was invited as an expert. And it was the show on how to lead a happy marriage. Okay, I'm not married. Just letting you know. So I went on the show, and there were two actresses who were hosts, and one was a very senior actress, and she had just celebrated 45 years of marriage. Okay? So now I go, and there's this really beautiful setup, and I'm sitting as the expert and the guest for the day, and she asked me, how long have you been married? So I said, ma'am, I'm not married. Oh, you should have seen the look on her face. She shouted at the director, hey, isko kaun leke aaya? She's saying on my face. Yeah, not even that, go behind the curtain and say, why have you got her? Yeah, so on my face, what do you have to talk about? Happy marriage. And here's my contention, that a heart surgeon necessarily doesn't have to have a heart attack to be able to tell you what to do, right? Yeah, the people who have a heart attack and then tell you what to do become motivational speakers, but not doctors. Yeah, so, I, from the outside, have a little bit of qualification because I also taught for 9 years. I was a French teacher, and I taught over 1900 students in my career of 9 years of teaching. So I have had experience of dealing with children, dealing with parents, on being a child myself, and a motivational speaker in the past 24 years. So I've just put all of it together, and I'm bringing you a few tips so that you can have a good idea or maybe something to think about to make a little shift, if at all needed, in your life. Is that good enough? Okay, awesome. So, like I said, I'm very, very grateful to my parents for allowing me the platform to do what I love to do. See, what's my profession? I'm a woman, I get paid to talk. How cool is that? Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of women who talk a lot but don't get paid. Yeah, and then also complaining no one's listening. Yeah, so that's one thing which, I feel was an encouragement and allowance by my parents for figuring out right that she speaks well so she could make a career out of it. And I tell you, I've written 10 books and I know authors, and please, I'm not saying any of this to impress you. It's only to impress a fact upon you that while people see where I am, I owe it all back to my upbringing and to my parents. Yeah, so that's one thing that I'm hinting back at, and with the idea that if I can make it, then your children can perhaps make it. Yeah, so the first point that I want to make, yeah, you can sit, there are chairs that side if you want to sit that side. Yeah, maybe somebody can direct the people who are coming in this side. Okay, but thank you for making it. So let me tell you, the first thing that I want to talk about is that with your children, start them off early. See, I would not have made here, I've been speaking for the past 24 years. I taught for 9 years. I've been writing for 10 years. Yeah, so that's a lot of years put together. I am not as young as I look. Yeah. Hey, don't smile like that. I'm not as old as you think either. Yeah, I just started very early in life. Yeah, so start your kids early because the signs show up very, very early. For example, I'm writing the book of Pulela Gopichand. He's the chief national coach for badminton, world champion himself in badminton, and also the guy behind PV Sindhu, Saina Nehwal. You heard of him, right? Yeah, and I'll tell you one fact that he said, that if you want your child to be a world champion, you have to enroll him in the academy by 5 years. Even 6 years is a bit too late. 7 years, he'll never make it. Because you see, in the early days, when your children are exposed to expertise, or if you find signs of their calling, they have a chance to come to the world platform and be number one. That if you're 11-year-old, and you suddenly realize that my son is good at sports and I think he can make it as a champion, you're too late behind. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. And how do you figure? You see the signs very, very early on. So Gopi Chand didn't know that he would be a badminton player. He used to play cricket. And you see, sports is sports. But the parents were vigilant enough to say, hey, my son loves sports so much that he wakes up early. You know how difficult it is sometimes to wake up children? He wakes up early to go early for practice. So let's say if sports practice is at 6, he will reach the stadium or the court at 5 o'clock. Who does that? Somebody who loves sports. So the signs are there. We may choose to sideline it and say, leave all of this and study. It's good to make a note on the side that, this is what he's exhibiting, and then take a call depending on your finances and schedule and your purpose and calling, how that fits in the scheme of things. And you know what? It's very, very important to catch these signs early on so that you can allow your children the path to follow their purpose. Because I will tell you, I've been a teacher for 9 years, I've been a student myself, and you have been too. Do you know that the amount of pressure and stress parents put that first finish your studies, then you play, right? You don't stand a chance for world championship. And did you know that even the world champions study on the side? Yeah, so it's not that they're compromising on studies. And if the idea is you finish your studies first and then make it, did you know how many graduates are still confused about what to do in life? Yes? I mean, think about your days, where you thought, let me just finish my graduation and MBA and get started. And the perennial question is, now what? Yeah, so the signs don't come later. Later, you're already biased and confused by where your friends are going and so on. And then people in their 40s say, I think something's missing from my life. How do I find my calling? How do I find my purpose? Hey, go back to when you were 5 years old or when you were 4 years old. The signs were crystal clear right then. And if you don't believe me, pick up anybody you admire, a legendary person. I've had the good fortune of having some amazing friends. Sonu Nigam is a dear friend of mine. Do you know what age he started? Go on, take a guess. He started singing at 3. He was doing professional performances at the age of 5. Was he a student as well? He was a brilliant student. But the parents were clever enough to say this guy makes music on his own. There could be potential. Yes, no? Yeah, so start them off early. Okay, keep your ears and eyes open. And like I said, park it on the side because sometimes it's a very tall commitment, even on the part of parents, to fulfill what their children want. Yes, no? Yeah, and also working parents. How many of you work? Let me see. Okay, so that's almost everybody is working. So how do you manage your schedule? At least be aware. So when your child lands up confused and says, I don't know what to do in life, maybe remind him, you love to talk. Can you speak something for us? Can you recite or can you write something? Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you play? And these are things that take people way forward in life. And I'll tell you the second part. The second is you have to allow your children to fight their own battles. Okay? Now, let me tell you about my parents. Both my parents were working and I came from a very low middle class background. Okay? And my parents were very clear. And look, be clear with your kids. They are very smart, yeah? Which is also scary for us because, some of them are even smarter than us. So my parents were very clear and they told me and my brother that, look, mom and dad are going to work because we have to provide for the household. So A, we have no time to teach you. We have no time to supervise. So if you want to continue to study, you better learn in school. Yeah, do you think that's a good directive? Don't come back and say, I don't know. If you don't know, ask the teacher. Do you think that's a smart idea to do? They said, we don't have money for tuitions. You ask your teachers. If you're still confused, you ask your grandfather. Yeah, if you're still confused, go figure. Yeah, so it was very clear we do not have the time. Okay, and if that is an agreement, we learned how to go figure. Now, do you think that's a great life skill to have? Go figure? Yeah. Oh my God, please teach it very early on. Because when you see youngsters looking for answers, I give them one answer, my parents give me go figure. Oh, but no, you tell me. You know what? Your answer will never be the right answer. Try telling your kids. And then, no, but okay, all right. Yeah, does that make sense to you? Yeah, and fight your own battles. When I was writing about Gopi Chand, so he was telling me an instance. Gopi Chand, when he started out playing, he was one of those kids who was 9 years old but looked 5. Those kids? Yeah, they turn 11 and they look 6. So he was a really lean, small kid, and in school they used to call him Chuha. That was his nickname. He was very upset about it. So he said, first of all, I was the weakest of the lot in my batch. And then he said that at his time when he was playing, the parents, when they would enroll their kids in sports, they would backdate their birthdays. So let's say a 16-year-old, the birth date was changed and written as an 11-year-old. I don't think that happens now, but those kind of things used to happen then. So he says, I used to go to school to play in the league of 9 to 11. I'm already qualifying as 5 and I'm playing with a 16-year-old with a full-grown mustache and a beard. And he said, which 11-year-old has that kind of, an appearance? And he said it was so difficult because you see, as children, when they're growing, even a 6-month difference is a big difference, right? You see the child 6 months ago and now he's taller than you. So imagine a 6-year difference. And Gopi Chand loved to play. So this is a sport that is his passion, which he's going to perhaps take on for a life. Okay? And he says, I would go on court and every day I would lose, obviously. Yeah, so you have a 9-year-old boy playing with a 16-year-old boy. Do you expect him to win? He loses. And he says he lost every single day of his life. And he would come home and he would tell his mother that life is not fair. It's not fair. Do you think life is fair? Now you're saying it at this age, it's not even fair when you are young. So the mother, when I was speaking with her, she was crying and she's saying, I was the world's worst mother. Cut to Gopi Chand saying, if it was not for my mother, I would not have been the world champion. So I said, why would you say that? She said, my son would come to me and say, it's so unfair. They are pitching 16-year-old boys with me and Ma, every day I lose. And the mother says, Sorry, that's how life is. Do you think that makes sense? Because he was expecting you come to school and fight. And you get me what is fair, get me to play with the 9 to 11-year-olds. Tell me, can you really fight the system? Of course you can. Then the mother would have been a champion. Yeah, maybe not the son. So she tells the son, look, you're losing to the 16-year-old boy. In his winning is his shame because he's losing to a 9-year-old. Yes? That's a very powerful lesson. And she says, lose every day. You losing to a 16-year-old is your victory. Does that make sense? That guy says, I would come back home to prepare not at my level, but at the level of a 16-year-old. So what he would do is, he was in a hurry to finish his studies, and then he would practice against the wall. Yeah, because he didn't have somebody to play. You should read the book when it's released. Yeah, it's amazing. And the kind of what goes into making of a champion, one thinks it's the game, it's the sport. No, it's the mind. So he would smash against the wall and prepare to play against a 16-year-old. Cut to the 16-year-old. Do you think he's putting in as much practice and effort? He's going to beat the 11-year-old tomorrow again. Yes? And in that game, he grew so fast. By the time Gopi Chand was 16, he was beating everybody. Does that make sense? Yeah, allow children to fight their own battles. Because you know what? They will grow up in life and won't know what to do. Yes? But be there, watch there. Watch over them and be there if they need help. So the mother would help with his diet, with his rest. She would keep his bags packed. So he says, I would come home and my clothes are already folded and kept on the bed. The food is already ready and the mother is waiting in the balcony to see he's coming. Then she runs, makes the rotis, and by the time she puts it on the table and goes to get the milk, the food is over. Yeah? So that much arrangement they did. They gave the facility to the best of their abilities, but they did not fight the battle for their children. And I think that solves so many problems, because the greatest stress is that, in being overprotective, we somehow cut their wings to deal with life. Yes, no? Yeah, like my parents said, go figure, but they were always there. At least my grandparents were there as sentries. And also, please know, I write a lot of biographies. I love that because, I'm always looking for ideas and tips and hacks on how to make it from nothing to everything. And I've interviewed so many industrialists, and I will tell you this, that success, a lot of times parents sacrifice their family life. They sacrifice time with their children in teaching them values because they're so busy making a living. And while that is good, please always remember that making a living must also have a foundation of values, yes, and principles which must serve the family first. I have interviewed so many people. Okay, there was one industrialist I was interviewing, and I interviewed over 200 of his counterparts. Okay, the people who were dealers and vendors and so on and so forth. And each one sang such beautiful praises about the guy, what he stands for, what the values are, how they were treated, and so on and so forth. And when I come to the family, they have an opposite story. Hey, my dad never cared. They packed us off to boarding. Yes? So I feel making your family first a beneficiary of what you stand for is very critical. Your values, your principles, your personality must serve them first. Yes, no? Otherwise, they learn that being good does not serve you. That good people suffer. That if families and parents are good, then we will pay the price. Actually, that's not the truth. Right? The price is not to be paid by the family. I interviewed this industrialist. I wrote his biography as well. It's DTDC, the company, the courier company, the door-to-door courier. So the guy says, who called me to write the guy's book? His son. Now that is the greatest compliment for a man who calls me, his son calls me and says, I need to talk to you. We need to capture my father's journey. Now when a son says, I want to know my father better, I tell you, you've created a legacy. That's the highest compliment. All the money on one side, everything that you have done on one side, where your son says, my dad he doesn't tell the whole truth. Maybe he will tell you, or I know and I want to know more. Yeah, so your family must be served first. Like the parents used to, the gentleman, Shubhashish Chakrabarti, he included his wife in the business. He included his children in the business versus putting them away. Yes? Yeah, and you know, when his son went to do his MBA, the father went to business school to learn for 2 weeks. Yeah, so he tells his son, I'm going to study as well. Let's exchange notes later. Yeah, because a lot of times I have seen people build this empire and the legacy, and the children are not interested. Yes. Yeah, even at the corporate level, you know, I say, I challenge you. Take out your business card and what's the designation on it, show it to your son and says, Dad, I want to be head of administration of, you know, so-and-so company. That's not happening. Forget about it. So when your children say, I want to take your shoes, means your values have been visible and served them well. Yes. Yeah, and also, let me tell you that especially the millennials today, it's tricky for parents because they have so much more exposure. I think they are learning more from the internet than they are from you. And then they're teaching you. Yeah, because they have all the time and the luxury to do that. But you know what? The minute you say no to them, you have to first say no to you. Yeah, so I have people who say, my children are addicted to the phone, but you gave them the iPad when they were born. Yeah, so that you could do your work. So I think understanding what you stand for first, being clear about that, it's very easily followed. You know, Gopi Chand in his interview, he said that when he was growing up, okay, he lived in Hyderabad for 17 years after they moved there. He said in 17 years, we had never had Hyderabadi biryani. That's a specialty. They had never ever gone to a restaurant, ever. He was telling his children that. Yeah, and I asked him, so how did it feel? He said, it felt normal because my parents never went. Yeah, you feel, hey, you have the phone, you're watching TV, you're not letting me do it, right? You see a yes here and a no here, that's where the rebellion comes in. He said, it never felt out of the ordinary. My mother made such amazing food, and for us, food was energy that we never even said, let's go to a restaurant. Yes? Y'all are looking at me like that, all okay, no? Or y'all are still thinking, yeah, why is she talking about parenting? Well, I'm the heart surgeon without the heart attack yet. Yeah, so I like that part where what you stand for becomes an unsaid teaching serving your children. Yeah, and not giving too many allowances and privileges. See, when we were young, we didn't have so many allowances and privileges, and therefore we understood the value of earning and deserving. Anything we wanted, we had to earn. So when I wanted the bicycle, my father said, okay, why don't you stand first, we will get it for you. Yeah, so it was always goal oriented. It was always target oriented. And if my friends had something and I wanted it, guess what? Yeah, so maths is not a good score. How about you do this? And mind you, they had already said, go figure. So I had to stand first on my own account. Yes. And there was this yearly prize, which is ask what you want in the beginning of the year. Yeah, so we had these very lofty goals. I want 3 dresses and 1 cycle and so on. And then there was a target. So there was one time, I had these very lofty goals, and my father said, ask what you want in the beginning of the school year. So I made this whole list, and he said, it's a done. So you stand first in class and first in sports. Now that's a tricky one. And first in sports means you have to win 5 races. Okay, that's when you stand first in sports, and obviously first means you an aggregate first in the academics, which for a student is very, very tough. And if you can set your children to be goal oriented, I tell you, your life is set. There's a higher spiritual contribution that you can make to teach your children life skills. While there are activities and facilities where they can go figure, but it is your direction that gets them there. So while I was awesome in studies, I had no time to play. And you know, as a kind of person, I grew up in the north, so the summers were very harsh. Yeah, so the sports used to come during the summers, and I hated it. I hated to run, and I hated to sweat, and I just hated the sun. So I obviously didn't want to go for the practice of the sprints and the marathons. But you know what? If you can get your kids to be street smart and win, you're a winner already as a parent. So I found out all the good runners were taking part in the sprints and the marathons. So I selected the races where the good runners were not, which was slow cycling, lemon and spoon, sack race, and so on. You have to win 5 races to be number 1 in sports. Yeah? And that year, I won all medals in lemon and spoon and sack race and cartwheel and whatever that was, and year after year, because I'd figured the trick. So the competition was less, yeah, and plus it was less stressful. It just suited what I wanted. And till now, I have sports person of the year with 5 medals hanging. So if you come to my house and you look at the kind of medals I have and say, oh my God, you were an athlete, you know, I'd smile and say nothing, yeah, because it doesn't say gold medal in lemon and spoon, yeah. So is there a way to make it to number 1? Yes, suit a job, suit an avenue that goes with your personality, that go, and don't be afraid to take the road less traveled. And I tell you, while management books and spiritual books are filled with these lessons, they're very hard to teach, especially when people have grown up. But if you start right from the beginning, these small tweaks and small changes, I think it goes a long way into setting your children up for life. They will go figure. When you worry and, you know, I mean, first of all, you won't worry. They'll tell you, Mom, chill, I've got this one. Yeah? When your children start teaching you, you know you've done a good job. Yeah? And ask my mom, she says, I mean, she takes credit for everything. Because people always ask me, I've been a motivational speaker for the past 24 years, and you have to know the corporate world is male dominated. Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I'm seeing so many women in the group. Yeah, otherwise generally it's the opposite. There'll be a handful of women sprinkled and so on. So people ask me, did you have to struggle? Did you have trouble? And I say, no, I've had the easiest life. I have not struggled my way. I have not been a rebel. I mean, rebel in so many ways in life, but not against my family. Because I think that totally beats the purpose of it. Yeah, my family has been with me. I've had the most beautiful, easiest life. I have been able to handle my career because my parents had a service background. I am in a totally different field. So where do I get the confidence, or where did I get the push? My parents were right there, having ensured that I have the right elements to make it, and they're there as a backbone. Yeah? And I feel when you allow your children that privilege, they will make it. They will make it on their own. They will come back and tell you, I think I want to be a motivational speaker. At the age of 22, that time. Yeah, at the age of 22, 24 years ago. Hey, don't do the math. Yeah, that's not, I can already see you all adding the numbers. See, whatever number you're adding, just minus 10 out of it. Yeah, that would be reasonable. Yeah, so 24 years ago, to wake up one day after leaving my job as a tuition teacher teaching French, saying, I want to be a motivational speaker, everyone stood up and said, you've never done a job before, you're just 22. Gain some experience and then get started. And my mother said, go figure. And I figured it. And I tell you, if I would have gotten into a job, trust me, I would have been able to leave, because I know so many people who write to me on a daily basis saying, I want to be a motivational speaker. I'm thinking how to make the transition. Yeah. So while that guy is having such a tough time to make the transition, he's not able to figure. Yes, that's my point. And it does not come at the age of 30. It's very, very tough. You know that. You've spoken to people, and I've spoken to over 2 million in 46 countries. It's the same story all through. Teach your children to know their passion. Talk to them. Give them timelines, because of course their minds are wavering. It's okay to test for 30 days and see what he likes. Make your notes. Allow them to fight their own battles. Trust me, it will make your life easier. Be there watching and ensure that you have values that are visible and values that you stand as an example for and make them beneficiary of. No two ways about it. And then lastly, and not the least, is to ensure that you allow them to understand what it means to earn and what it means to deserve. Because if they get these two things right, They will never ask for privileges and allowances because they know they can do it and they deserve it and they're worth it. So I thought this little point would be okay to make. Yeah, in all humility, your parents, I understand that it's tough, but it's possible. If I have showed up here, then your children can show up anywhere. Yeah, I wish you that luck, and thank you, ma'am, for having me here. A small point, and you girls are so adorable. They are training to be motivational speakers. It's a very good industry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.